Hello, today we'll be discussing moles, which is part of the PECs and moles framework recently released by Microsoft. It is a free power tool for Visual Studio. It supports both Visual Studio 2010 and 2008. The PECs portion requires an MSDN subscription to use, but moles is free. Moles is a delegate-based mocking framework. Unlike most mocking frameworks, it can mock pretty much any CLR-based class, including static classes, static methods, and sealed classes. It does this via a runtime instrumentation that allows it to connect into all of your calls. I'm going to now show you an example of how to do this. Here I have a simple linked SQL class program. It is connected to the AdventureWorks sales database, and we are going to use it to extract a list of customers based on their city. So I have made a data access class and has a get customers by city method that does a link to SQL query to return customers by city. I've tested this and it seems to work great. To be sure that it continues to work great though, I'd like to put it under a unit test. So I created a unit test project and made a test get customers by city test. We create a new data access layer and we call the get customers by city. The problem with this is though, if I debug it, we can step in here and see that when we run this, if I take this result and grab its list, that we have a lot of results. And these are the actual results from the database. So according to unit testing rules, this is not a real unit test because we are hitting the database, not really doing what we wanted to do. So we need some way to abstract this away so that we don't hit the database. So we're just testing our logic in here. The logic could clearly be more complex in a real program. So we'll go back to our test class, and our problem is that we are instantiating this customer doll, and then when we go in here, we go off of this real context. So we need to find some way to not be using this context. So to fix this, we are going to make another constructor. And this one will actually be the one that we use for our application, and it will create our context to pass in. But this one, we want to be able to take a context. And then we will store that in our local class. And now we can call this with either the context or without the context. So we'll go back to here and we need to have a context now to pass in, one that's mocked. Well, let's go look and see what we're using. Here we have this context, and it's really the individual customers that we want to mock. So if you go look at that table class, it's system.data.link table, but the problem is that the class is sealed. So traditional mocking structures require you to have an interface to the class that you're going to mock, and so that you can create an instance of it that is not your class that you're actually not wanting to test against. Since this class is sealed, we can't put an interface on it, we can't descend from it, we're really limited in what we can do. Fortunately, the moles framework is able to take care of that. So we are going to go to our test project, and we're going to say add new item. And we will select moles and stubs for testing. And this will create our moles file. Now this part you want to name it to be exactly the name of the namespace you're trying to test. So here we're going to be testing our services. So we'll call it services moles, and we'll hit add. And it goes through, and it takes a little while to go and add in all the different parts. You can look down in the bottom, and when that says it's all done, then you know you're actually finished. So we go back here now, and we have 3 parts to our moles file. It has a designer that just simply has an identifier in it. It's not very useful. A DLL that's compiled, and an XML file that contains the things that we are now moling. Now we're going to need one other type of mole. For our context, we need this services mole, but we also want to mock the actual table we are looking at that's sealed. So we're going to go and add another item in here that is another moles and stubs file. And we're going to put in here system.data.link. This will allow us to mole the link classes. Now I've hit a common gotcha here. If it doesn't fill everything in, then it means it failed and it couldn't figure it out. So the thing you have to do is you have to make sure that the file you're trying to mole, or the reference you're trying to mole, is in your project. If it's not in there, the moling will fail. So we're going to load up that as a reference, the system data link DLL. So we'll go and add that to our project. And then to get moles to rerun, you can recompile, but sometimes it doesn't do it. So you can just right click on it and say run custom tool. And it will go and recompile everything that it had in its mapping. So now we've succeeded. So now that moles is all in there, we can go back to our test and start adding some things in. So the first thing we need is a data context here. So we're going to say that we want a context. Now, the way moles and stubs work is that if it's a mold class, it will put an M in front of the name of the class you're trying to get. So we're going to say M Venture Works Sales Data Context. And we want to say new on that. And then I'll let ReSharper add the reference for me. If you didn't have ReSharper, you'd have to add that in manually. So now I have a mold version of this AdventureWorks data context, which can be used just like the original, and I can just pass it in there. Now, we want our list to do some different things. We don't want to hit the database, but we want some data in there. So I'm going to create a new list. And I'm going to make it take the type of my individual customer, and I'm just going to fill in some customer IDs and names. I'm going to copy and paste those in there for time, but basically I've made a whole bunch of customers that just have varying cities and have the IDs. The rest of it's not important to my test, so I'm not going to worry about filling it in. So now, when we run a query against our context, we want to use this list. So we're going to make an M table. The table was the name of our sealed class that we couldn't get, so we'll let moles throw that in there for us. Or not moles, ReSharper, sorry. And we will set that equal to a new table. And then you have to bind it so that it accesses the data correctly. So we're going to say customer table dot bind, and it will put in there our customer link list dot, and then we've got to say as queryable, because we want to bind it to, we want it to be able to be queried, because we're going to be querying this value through link to SQL. So there, that is correctly put together. This turns out to be a fairly common practice. I have made little method to allow it to work for all of my unit tests, and it will just substitute that in there, and we'll say set up link table, and then you can just pass in the customer link list, and that does the exact same thing as those two lines. So we'll refactor that out a little bit, and this just takes some type parameters and sets up the binding just the same. So now though, we have one last thing. We need to tell our data context what happens when it does our query, because right now we've set up a lot of stuff, but still over here we haven't told it what happens when this v individual customers gets called. So we'll go in here and we'll say that our context, and then we have our v individual customers get. Now the way the methods are defined in moles is it will usually, if there's parameters, it will put in the parameter type. So you'd have, like, if there was took 3 strings, it'd say string, string, string. And since this is a getter, it's just going to say get. So we're going to put that in there. And then this is a delegate, or a, however you want to put it in. It's a pointer to another kind of method. So we don't really want to take any parameters, but we are going to say that when it gets that, we want to return the customer link list. No, we want to return the customer table, sorry. So now we have an actual M table, which is a type of link table that's been molded, that will be returned when we call this method. So now let's try compiling. Before we can debug, there's one very important thing that you have to put in. If you are just doing moles without PEX, it requires declarative value at the front of your method. And you have to put in here host type and then moles. And that tells the moles framework that you're using moles in here and to be ready for that. Right now we have a bad test setup because we only have London as our cities. And so we need to add San Francisco in as one of our cities. So we'll take another city 1 out and put in San Francisco. So now we can debug this, and we can step into that, and we can take a look at our list that we had earlier that had all the values from the database, and we can see that we had account 1, and that the value has San Francisco and customer ID 2. So it took our list rather than trying to hit the database. And our test goes on and passes. So we have successfully molded this connection to the link side of our tooling and allowed us to abstract just our logic in our data access layer. So that is the information for the moles part of the PEX and moles framework, and thank you very much.